Hey crafty friends, it's Jeannie, and today I'm sharing 3 cards that I created using one Slimline toner card front, one die, and one piece of foil. Thermoweb recently came out with a ton of different patterns pre-printed with toner on card fronts in both A2 and Slimline and on white cardstock or Kraft cardstock. For today's card, I decided to use the Kraft Slimline toner card front in candy stripes along with the Trinity stamped Sweetheart panel die and the Deco foil transfer sheet in rainbow shattered glass. I thought that it would work really well because the patterns would show up on all the little hearts that I'm cutting with that Sweetheart panel. For the rainbow shattered glass, I pulled out all the different foils in this pack and I decided to pick the one that had the most colors. There's definitely a variety in each of these foil packs and it's so pretty because it has this little pattern on it and it really gives it some shine and dimension. Once I pick out my pattern, I'm going to put everything else away. I keep all my little scraps because I just want to save them. For the Slimline card front, I will trim down any excess as well. I will be using this with my mini Minc machine. I will put the Slimline card front, then the foil, and I'm wrapping it in printer paper. So there's plastic transfer holders, but because I couldn't find mine, I just used printer paper and it works just fine. So I'm running it through my mini Minc machine on level 3. The light will turn from red to green and I'll let it sit for a little bit just to make sure it's hot enough so I get a good transfer. And of course you can run it through a second time, but I prefer just to wait and let it heat up and then run it through. These transferred so nicely and so crisp that once I remove the sheet, you can see that my scrap piece is just perfect. And that's where I decided to come up with 3 cards instead of just 2. So originally my plan was to do 2 cards, one with the negative and one with the positive hearts. But because that transferred so nicely, I decided that I had to use that scrap instead of throwing it away for another background. So for my first card, I popped out all the hearts and I am using the background die as a template because I'll be popping all the hearts up on foam. So I'm using these 3D white foam squares and I actually ended up cutting the squares in half and that created little rectangles that were almost the perfect size to go right into the hearts so I could pop them up. So yes, this was kind of tedious, but it was totally worth it. And I thought that, you know, you can pop on a TV show or movie and you can kind of be mindless about it, just working on each of the hearts. So once I filled up all the little hearts with foam, I'm going to put the dies in. You can see that I kept them in order on my glass mat so I wouldn't confuse anything. For the foam squares, they have release paper and you just remove it and then you'll just be able to put the hearts directly onto the foam and it will stick. And of course, because you're adding dimension, it won't be perfect as if like you didn't have foam, you could just do a easy die inlay and everything would be flush. But because there's foam, it's a little bit harder to get it flush. But once I added all the hearts to that panel, I'm going to carefully remove the background and that will be used for a second card. So I thought that it just turned out really pretty and the foil really picked up on every single heart and it was all different patterns, which I really liked too. So for the second card, I'm using that background panel on a piece of white cardstock and then I'm going to use that scrap piece of paper also on a piece of white cardstock. For my first cards where I did the die inlay, I'm going to trim down that panel and mat it on Kraft cardstock. For my second card, I'm just going to be adding glue to the panel and I'm using liquid adhesive just because it's easier. I'm using the Ultra Bond Adhesive and this dries clear so I don't have to worry about any excess glue spilling out on the sides or anything like that because it will dry clear. And for my second card, I also used liquid adhesive. I could have popped everything on foam as well, but because I spent all that time with the little hearts, I decided that I'm just going to glue this directly onto the white Slimline panel because I didn't want to do that again. And some days I feel like it and some days I don't. This time I was 50-50. I did it for the hearts. I didn't do it for the main panel. And so for the last one, I'm also using liquid adhesive, and I'm just adding that glue to the biggest stripes in the middle. And that's enough to adhere to the card panel and really stick to it. Once I did that, I added it to my Slimline card panel, which was bigger than normal, so I had to trim it down. I create Slimline cards that are 3.5 by 8.5, so they're a little bit smaller than people doing it like I think 4 by 9. I like doing the 3.5 by 8.5 because you can just cut a piece of paper and get quite a few panels out of it. For the sentiments for this card, I decided to use Trinity Stamp's Scripty Thanks die. And this comes with the Scripty thank you as well as the shadow. So I cut a couple of these sentiments out of black cardstock, white cardstock, and I cut one of the shadows out of vellum. And I did a mix of the sentiments on the different card panels. So for the first card, I used the vellum with black cardstock. For the second card, I just used the black cardstock for the Scripty thank you. And then for my last card, I used a black shadow with the Scripty words in white cardstock. For that last card, I actually went back and added some pieces of washi just to give it a little bit more interest because it looked a little plain, but I thought all three cards turned out really well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!